Gerrie, can you tell me your reasons for giving this interview?
Yeah, I think those should be crystal clear from the outset. We, a group of youngsters that embarked on the exercise nearly 39 years ago, or 39 years ago to date, have always kept the code of honor and kept quiet. Now that we've reached an advanced stage in our lives, we want recognition for this. When we approached our leadership, we either got a cold shoulder, were totally ignored, or were vehemently attacked from the outset. So there is no way that there can be reconciliation between the two parties. And our main gripe is exactly that our leaders then did not keep us informed, and they now do not acknowledge us. And I can motivate this by saying we learned with shock that there was a Savannah, because I'm talking about Operation Savannah, there was a Savannah Foundation that is affiliated with the major role player, the CMBO. I forgot the abbreviation now, but it will get back to me or come back to me. This organization is affiliated with the CMBO, but they do not, even now, after 7 months when we took note of them, they do not even want to acknowledge us, the fighting forces upon whom they build their careers and legends, because they were a bunch of egocentric officers that they were in such fierce competition amongst each other to make a better name or build a better legend amongst themselves, and to, in their old age, they're all now sitting with nice fat pensions. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to hear us. They refuse to acknowledge us. And for the fighting guys, me and my mates, this just doesn't wash. The time to go on record and to speak out and to correct the warped history that they, as the leadership, put forward. And they did that to hide away their very, very weak command and control. Barry, I'll put it on record, and anybody can challenge me on this. In the couple of months that I was in Angola, I wasn't exposed to one order group. So they did not even deem it fit to keep their men informed. One of the basic principles of being a military man is keep your men informed on every level. Now we find out, we're a group of about 170 people, we find out that yes, we did have infantry. Yes, we did have artillery. Yes, the parabats were there. And we didn't know about this before because we were kept in these little cocoons, never told about flanking units or formations or even troops in the same geographical area who did not wear identifiable uniforms, because it was such an amateurish hush-hush operation that we had to wear prison uniforms. And so did all of the guys that went in. We couldn't take anything that identified us as South Africans. We couldn't take our personal weapons. If you wanted to take toothpaste, you had to scrape off the name and the make and made in South Africa. And it was so ludicrous. When we went in our armored cars, we were flown in to then Silverport to, I think it's now Wambu. You know, it was so obvious that we're South African. We were told to speak English. But clearly on the tires, it says Goodyear, made in South Africa. You know, Firestone, made in South Africa. You had both the makes. So who the hell they wanted to fool? I don't know. There were incidents where guys got exposed to foreign or international correspondence in the form of journalists that flew in and that tried to cover this. And it wasn't their fault. They were busy loading unserviceable equipment on the planes, the only airfield that we had, available to us at the time. And of course these guys started communicating with the journalists when they asked them questions. And how the hell do you hide away a South African accent? No, we mercenaries. No, I'm not telling you where we come from. I mean, they struggled with difficult words like E's and R. So, I think the main part of our problem at this stage is it's not our problem. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm now determined to address the situation and get it down to the T. And I'm willing to mention names and submit proof of correspondence that I had with our leaders over the past 7 months. You ask a chairman of the Savannah Foundation, how do we go about for addressing this wrong? How do we go about for addressing the lack of recognition that is seriously lacking? Not only in the form of decorations, but in the form of we were there. We were the fighting men. We did an enormous task with very little. We barely got fed. We shut ourselves to death because the rations that they deemed fit to give us were color-coded. And somebody had a macabre sense of humor in the lock chain. You knew red was meat. All the labels removed because it can't be South African. Green was supposed to be vegetables, green or blue. And blue was pudding or something like that. But the shelf date on the tins, which they could not remove, was 2 years past expiry date. We had to eat that. We were not allowed to loot. Threat of death.
That's living off the land.
Yeah. You get caught out catching a chicken or supplementing your diet with something, you were threatened you're going to be shot. As one of the first groups that went in, and I was part of Battle Group Foxbat, which was the armor squadron that got flown in from Ondongwa to Silverport. I'm under correction, but I believe it to be the beginning of October in 1975. We were treated like crap when we went in. We were treated like absolute rubbish with the duration of the exercise. We believed in what we did. We fought like demons, and I'm talking of everybody that was involved like that. We gave these commanding officers a time to establish their legend and their careers riding on our backs. Upon our return, we were treated like absolute shit. The national servicemen. Okay, I joined permanent force upon my return. But the guys that finished their 2-year stint, because that was the time of the SADF when you could, for the first time, I'm talking 74 now, you could volunteer for 2 years service. You were supposed to get paid vast sums of money, and never thereafter would you ever be called up for any duties. You were free after you've done your 2 years. Now these guys completed their 2 years. When we left, we had to go and dump our kit because we could take no personal belongings. We had to go and dump our kit in a bungalow that was supposed to be guarded, and upon our return we would get our kit back. At the stage everybody was involved in Savannah, so there was no control over this kit, this forgotten kit. So there were break-ins, things like your firearm, a controlled item, just got stolen. All your personal belongings got stolen. All your military equipment that you grow quite fond of got stolen. When these guys came back, they were held away from the new intake because we were not supposed to be able to communicate to them. We were dirty, filthy. You had one set of clothes. So maybe there's a bit of logic in this. The parabats, for example, got placed under armed guard. This is how you treat people that has now laid their lives on the line for your cause. They got placed under armed guard until the time was for them to clear out, and they were basically shown the gate and chased away. Do not bother us again. At the gate, in certain instances, there will be a little clerk standing and hand you the only recognition that some of us ever got. They would hand you your preparator with Koneni class in a little envelope. In most cases, like mine, I never got paid my bush pay. I spent the better part of 2 full months in Angola. I never got that bush pay. When I joined permanent force, my national serviceman pay was immediately cancelled, and I had to wait for chief staff pay for 7 months before I got my first permanent force pay. Now, these are not grounds for the bitterness that exists amongst our group, because it's clearly now us and them. I'm being accused that I want to taint the image of the SADF. Bullshit. I've reached out, I've reasoned, I tried to get through to this old bunch that are very scared of their legends and their pension. There's probably more factors at play here. There's probably something like war crimes. We are still investigating that because there's a lot of rumbling amongst the rank about certain things that happen at a certain time. We played it on an initial website. This is not a place we bring the legalities in, because if I know about a crime, I'm obliged to report it to another authority. So we played that one down to a large extent, because it wasn't us that did it. It was certain individuals. I'm talking about executions, I'm talking about unnecessary shooting and things like that. I think that is what our leadership is very, very scared of. And they're vehemently denying our existence, our positive participation, and the very effective way that we tackled an overwhelming force with bugger all equipment. To state an example, we started the march westward and just rolled up the Cuban positions and Fatla positions, town after town after town. You normally use high explosive HE round for this. A armored car only takes 20 rounds, which you have to split up into high explosives and HE anti-tank, high explosive anti-tank. A HE anti-tank is useless to use against personnel because it needs a hard skin for the nose fuse to detonate, and then it burns through. So it's only effective on tank. At one stage we ran out of HE, and they just told us, use, eat. How the hell can you expect that of people putting their lives on the line? We had to bounce the bloody thing in a tar road before it hits a soft-skinned vehicle and would then, if you're lucky, detonate. Without food, without mail, never got any of those. Our parents didn't know where we were. We between the ages of 16 and a half to 19, in some instances, members of our group were already joined the police force before then became a permanent force member, but they're part of us. You don't touch us, because then you're looking for shit. And I have now taken in the point of view, I will do everything in my power to address this wrong. Jesus, they do not even want to acknowledge us. Why are we such a big threat? We want to put the history right. Because directly after Savannah stretched from, as I said, August to March 76, August 75 to March 76. So there were various stages of involvement. At one stage we realized we couldn't count on the rebel UNITA and we had to bring in our own white infantry. Also the leadership decided. Each and every one of these guys are precious because they are a true Savannah vet. Each and every one of these guys got treated like absolute shit by the powers that be. The gentlemen that later on became generals in the SADF and is now sitting with extremely healthy pensions, with chests full of ribbons and medals, and they deny us to just try and put the history straight. There was no command and control, as I mentioned. None. They knew that if this becomes fact, the legends that they build their career on will be past tense because nobody will ever believe them again. To what extent did they go? Oh, there was newspaper articles and huisgenoot articles about our little adventure in Savannah. But the interviews were only done with a select few. The leadership, the fighting man on the ground, was ignored to this day. And we not only been ignored, we effectively been shafted and said, you don't exist. That's why we call ourselves the forgotten soldiers. We're the ghost warriors. Nobody wants to know about us. Nobody did then. Nobody wants to know about us now. So with these interviews with the leadership, they had to lie to hide away the most basic of principles, the lack of leadership, the lack of communicating with your fighting soldiers. And I think they really scared old men. But I don't care anymore. As I said, I'm not angry anymore. I'm now determined to set the history straight. In certain instances, we seriously doubt the validity of honoris cruxes being issued to certain members because they were issued to individuals that vouch for the leadership. And you could say, no, it was good command and control. There is various brave deeds that went totally unrecorded because of this lack, this stupidity and this lack of command and control. Now, if they want me to go on record and start mentioning names about the lack of command and control, mentioning individuals, mentioning incidents by date, mentioning acts of valor, and comparing them with honoris cruxes issued, then just, we can go that route. I'm quite willing to do it. I've got all the time in the world. I don't receive a pension. I don't get my decoration. Why must I worry about these people that do not acknowledge us? There's a lot of bitterness amongst the guys, as you might imagine. These are kids that lived through trauma, that never got treated, that never got debriefed, that never got acknowledged. We do not have our place in the sun. We are now the older generation, and we're saying, enough of this, enough of the historical books that's all based on bullshit and the scheming minds of commanding officers to try and build their legend. I think I'll conclude with it there as an introduction. Okay, I want to talk about Ebo, the Battle of Ebo today, that happened on the 23rd November 1975. Cover a bit of a run-up to this battle, not so much the operational run-up, but the planning or lack thereof that went in before it. And I am going to mention names now. In this interview, I'm probably going to get a bit agitated because of things I feel very strongly about. Also in discussing Ebo, I am not discounting or subtracting or detracting from any other soldier's role that fought in Angola during Savannah. It is just that I know this example because I was part thereof. I logically spend more time researching that and reading up on that than on other battles or other fights. There were very brave men at other places as well, like Papa Troop that fought at Bridge 14 under Ben Grip, Stefan Fourie, the Gibson brothers, and various others. They did a sterling job in the December following the November in question. There is Orange, Battle Group Orange, that had some serious fight. There is Zulu. So I'm not mentioning them because I wasn't involved with them. I do not have a personal recollection, a personal perception, and the same focal point. So I'm not saying Ebo was the outstanding one. What I'm actually saying, it was a turning point in the war because we got hammered. And I'm going to concentrate on two things. The one is the deeds of valor that saw the light by the fighting men on the ground, the total and absolute lack of leadership, the fact that we got hammered and had some serious loss of life on the day through no fault of the fighting men, but the total lack of planning that was with this whole situation, or basically the main point for the loss on the day. And then also the warped history that got put forward by the commanding officers to make themselves look good and to address their lack of leadership, actually to correct it in the history books. So in saying that, I'm saying that the historians have all got it wrong because they were fed little bits of information, and they only did interviews with the commanding officers who were trying to hide their weaknesses. Now you'll find me coming back to this point the whole time for a couple of reasons. The one is that we were treated very, very badly, never informed, and afterwards, even worse. But then they expected us to have respect for these very same commanding officers later on in life. They betrayed us. They made us lose faith in the leadership of the SADF. In some instances, they made us lose faith in God. Some of the guys are totally anti any authority, including that. And you cannot blame the men, because we kept the code of honor, silence, silently hoping that somebody up there will have a pair of big enough balls to address this wrong. And we were 39 years after the fact, we're still proven wrong, and we're still getting rejected over and over. I'll draw two parallels. The one is what the officially available research said happened on the day, and the other one is what really happened. So if there's not clarity between the two, just point it out and I will try to say this is the real one. This is what the previous record said. Okay, the battle started early in the morning, or the advance started. Hannes Swanepoel's troop. Now I'm just going to make it simple and just mention the troop leader or the crew commander. Of course there's a crew of 3 involved, or a group of 12 involved. They led the advance. It's a misnomer to call it the Battle of Ebo because it didn't happen at Ebo, the town itself. A couple of days prior to that, there was also a massive contact in the town of Ebo. And then this Cuban FAPLA detachment withdrew and went into new ambush positions at under correction, it's either Masaba or Mabasa River. Now it's agricultural land, and the river it's not really a river, but it's a little spruitjie or ditch. But it's got very steep banks. It's a definite obstacle in terms of warfare. It was raining heavily, so you could not go off the road in any place. You got stuck. So they chose well. There was high ground all around in the form of granite hills, which immediately forced you into a defile, bunching you together. So they could pick the primary def acre, the secondary def acre. They could pick that very well. They utilized the weapons at their disposal very, very well. First of all, direct anti-tank, then indirect weapon. Small arms fire was hidden on the riverbanks, no more than 20 meters away from the car. So the car got shot out and the guy jumped out. He got taken out by small arms fire. But okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Hannes Swanepoel's troop led. And at that stage, when they passed into these little hills, there was a warning shot that went off on one of the copies. I believe it was an RPG. We had a spotter in the air as well, and the spotter reported trucks on the ground, but what he didn't see was the personnel. So we immediately knew there was enemy. The logical thing to have done, if you were a commander on the ground in the day, is to immediately reappreciate, because the terrain told you, we knew you driving into serious trouble. That didn't happen. No speculative fire was allowed, where you try and draw out the enemy to fire back. Our mortars were not deployed to try and clear the defile first before the guys went in. Nope. First of all, Hannes Swanepoel's troop then deployed tactically and immediately got stuck. So we, as the second in command car, drove forward and we branched off to the right to basically, nobody trusted the bridge over the river. We knew there's going to be fire. It's going into a certain depth. So just before it, we branched off to the north to recce for a crossing point, another crossing point, which we didn't find. In the process, we got stuck in a ploughed land, and my crew commander, Jacobo Kriel, had to jump out with a spade and dig us out, and told me to monitor the net. We were in sight of the enemy the whole time. Our only saving grace at that stage, as sitting ducks, were the immense fire control that they had on the ground. I mean, under normal circumstances, we would have been dead ducks. Then I heard over the air that Swanepoel got instructed, not Swanepoel, Johan. He got tasked to move forward, Johan de Tooy and his troop. He was the leading car. Then it was Piet van Allerweer. Then it was Gert Botha. I'm just talking crew commanders. And then it was Kees van der Linde. And Johan de Tooy reported back. He said, we at the bridge. And the next moment, all hell broke loose. We just got out of the mud. All hell broke loose. There were 3 or 4 shots in very quick succession, and you could hear it was 76 shot. And one of those guys in the group just screamed, please come and help us. So Bok asked me and Flappy Ludwig, our driver, he said, I cannot give you an order to go in. Are we going to help them or not? And we said, okay, we'll do so on our own accord. And while we were charging in, also into the defacre, they started firing with the 122mm BM21 or Grad P, which is quite a terrifying thing, as well as with mortars and with small arms. And the whole time, of course, anti-tank. We charged in, we got hit. I must have been on target. I didn't see it. I believe I saw the flash because we got hit on the muzzle brake. It burned through the muzzle brake, and because it was a heat ground, and burned down the barrel and still made serious spot marks on the mantlet. Bok was still standing out, so that explosion was half a meter below him. The second shot because there was a second shot and also a third, maybe up to 5. Took off the anti-aircraft Browning. Again a near miss, and the belt that was tumbling out of the Browning hit him over his head. He had a serious gash over the top of his head, which made him fall into the car and over the breech block. At that stage, our coaxial Browning machine gun was already empty. He could not reload that. He was stunned for a couple of seconds. I don't think he will recall that, because he probably had a bit of too hard a knock on the head. But when he came to, he's, "Why aren't you fucking firing?" And I just, went like this, and he had a look out and he said, "Oh shit." But we were level. We actually went past Kees van der Linde's car. So we were in the Def Acre, the third car from the front, when we got hit. So we accepted, we did. We accepted the fact. We were kind of comfortable with it. Then Flappy Ludwig said, "Wait, I'll get us out of this. I'll definitely get us out of this." And he started reversing. And between the driver and Bok, they still had the presence of mind to turn our flank, because we were then the primary target. Believe me, it's ping, 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 ping in the car and just bangs going off. And we turned our flank because Kees van der Linde was at the back trying to clear his petrol filters in a heavy contact. I mean, that guy was so full of shrapnel, it's just not true. So we were trying to draw the fire away from him. At that stage, it was chaos. John Baal's troop leader, Aubrey Klute, jumped out of his car, ran back. Some of the cars that got stuck in the mud got hit by direct hits from 122mm fire. It was total chaos. There was no command and control. The commanding officer on the ground was already dead. He got decorated for controlling the rescue effort. How can you coordinate and control a rescue effort if you already got a piece of shrapnel this size through your head? Less said about that, the better. We actually operated on our own the day without any orders given, this, that. It was just underling cooperation. With our car being unserviceable, Bok jumped into the car that got vacated by Aubrey Klute. Actually, a lot of us do not like the person, never did, and that was just a proving point, because he left his crew in the Def Acre of the ambush, saying he's going back to fetch more ammo, and the car haven't fired a shot at him. Later on, they found him sitting in a small little town close to Eber, crying, saying they're all dead. But Bok saw this and he jumped into that car, and he went back in. And he managed to rescue Gert Botha. At that stage, Kees van der Linde's car started again and he started reversing out. So there were 3 cars. Unbeknown to us, Owen Kevin Albright was tasked by Kees van der Linde to jump out, because everything was disintegrating about them, and he took cover in a ditch. And when there was a building next to this, and when this disintegrated, Kees van der Linde thought, okay, his gunner is dead. So he just reversed out, him and his driver, and they left Albright there, all right, and he was picked up later by another car. I can't remember who the crew was. But then Bok went in with Aubrey Klute's car and his crew, and they rescued Gert Botha. John Wahl, who was then Aubrey Klute's troop sergeant, already established a firing position. Even when we went in, he was already in the position. And when the 76 took us out the first time, and they were reloading, he took out the crew with his 90mm. He actually had to keep on taking it out because they were remanning it. I mean, all you shoot away is the humans, not the weapon. And they were remanning it over and over again. So he just kept on taking out 76 after 76. When Bok came out with Gert Botha, John Wahl and them left their position and went in the first time and picked up the driver. I think the driver was Jaco Kotze. Then a funny thing happened. 122 millimeter. The guys were actually out of their cars, standing, and 122 millimeter fell. And it was a Corporal Taljard and Bok got winded the second time in the back of his neck. Taljard was dead on the spot. Large piece of shrapnel hitting in the artery, so it was almost instantaneous. And you've got to remember, at this stage, all our infantry was non-existent. Our mortars got taken out immediately when they started firing. Our artillery was deployed wrong, too close to the high ground, so the angle they had to fire, they fired so far over the enemy that no forward observation posts could give corrections, because they couldn't even see where the rounds were falling. So there was no corrections at all. The pilot in the air tried to give corrections. I think there was somebody with him, artillery as well. But he became airsick. So it's just this comedy of errors the whole day. But it's not errors. It's lack of planning. It's lack of leadership. Now, I've explained very briefly what happened on the ground in Ebo. Now, the official records state that George Kruis was on the ground. Now, I would swear by anything that's holy, during the beginning of the battle, Kruis was not on the ground. I am almost certain that he was never on the ground, but he maintains that he was on the ground. Why would the senior officer be on the ground if he took our squadron commander and placed him behind the battle to be a relay station, when he put the infantry captain on the ground to be the battle commander on the day in armored car? So in this process, a lot of guys got decorated. Some were very brave men. Others we questioned, because others claim that they did the rescues that I know for a full fact Bok did, John Ball did, not Lieutenant Albert, and that's on record. I'm going to leave it at that, but the next day, Kruis was fuming, saying we lost the war, and basically shut us out, or we lost the battle. Not for one moment doing a bit of introspection and saying, maybe it was due to lack of planning. Maybe it's due that we didn't follow any tactical rules or norms or doctrine. We just sent this bunch of kids into their death. Because he got the order from 2 military sub-area that he must push on. There's a hurry to push on. Him as commander should have said, I cannot. My men are going to die. The day before, the enemy aircraft flew over us, light-wing aircraft, and they knew our exact orbit, which direction we were going. We were already in a Liga. And one of the reasons why I know that no planning took place is Kruis didn't give orders. I was never exposed to orders. Kruis didn't give orders. He had voted Lombard travel from Sela, about 20-30 kilometers away from this little spot, to come and give orders for the armor. Lombard didn't do a tactical appreciation. Kruis didn't do a tactical appreciation. Kruis blames Holland for not reappreciating, but his role in the reappreciation process never gets addressed. And these are the officers they wanted us afterwards to have respect for. I think we'll leave it there. I can add on a bit more later. Okay, what I want to discuss is recognition. And in broad terms, and I might wander off a bit and things like that, but first of all I want to describe the process that I have tried thus far, and the resistance that I have met with from people that I perceived would be more than willing to help us. Because there's two points here. The one is, nobody can say that recognition is not due. And by recognition I mean in the form of decorations for very brave deeds. And the second point is the absolute rejection that immediately when you broach this topic, we get from our leaders, the ones that are still alive, the people that retired as very senior officers or generals. The immediate reaction is a knee-jerk to say, it is not possible with the new dispensation. The new dispensation is always held right in front, saying, you're not going to succeed. Other excuses were also brought up, like, oh, the medals have been discontinued. Now, I went and I did my homework. First of all, there's still 2 decorations in circulation. Honours Crooks Silver. They have not been discontinued. There are higher decorations than that, that's still in service. There are lower ones than that, like a simple military merit medal, or bar for those that already have one. Now I'm talking about chaps who were not only exceptionally brave, but who have not even received the basics, being the prepatria and cunenical clasp. It's now expected of the individuals to go and apply for their medals that are due to them. And they're now sitting in a process where the prepatrias have been issued. There's only so many left. They're not going to mint anymore. Well, that's what some of the people say. But I mean, doesn't it make sense that the system that which you stood for and fought for and died for is the responsible party, or then the veteran organization that you belong to is the responsible party, and the onus should not be on the member to apply for his recognition, be it a prepatria. Let's take Ebo for example. Each and every one that got sent into Ebo in that death acre of the ambush, in my mind, should automatically classify or qualify for MMM. These guys were led like lambs to the slaughter. Why didn't, it's a line function, so why didn't the line officers in charge as you go up the pecking order see to this? Why didn't the commanding officer on the ground, if he could have written decorations or citations for decorations, he's now dead, for certain individuals, why could he have not done it for all? Why was it left up to be handled at unit level? At unit level, it was met with resistance from a commanding officer that was in Savannah as well, but he was more interested in rugby. So the citations written never made it further than a typist, but they're on record. We have copies of that, handwritten note. Internal politics, typical Boer mentality. If I can't get it, I'm not going to issue it to anybody else. And I get back to the resistance met from the leadership is, you know, I ask them one question. I just say, if it was your decorations, would you have the same attitude? Because I've been told, oh, stop this nonsense. Let's concentrate on the history. Let's compile the history, but not us. You guys write your history. That should be enough for you. The camaraderie should be enough for you. But they're getting their pensions. They wear their decorations to every veteran function. How? How can they expect very brave men to go without? Let me get to another point. Certain guys, and I'm still zooming in on Ebo, certain guys did get decorated for valor at Ebo. I'm not saying they didn't deserve it. I'm not going to climb into the act of valor as an act of valor. But certain guys did get it for other people's deeds. And now you take individuals like John Ball, like Bob Creel. They did 10 times more, because it's all on record what this guy got his decoration for. You can read it up in any book. And then you just compare it with what's available, or what John Ball and Bob Creel did, what Hannes Swanepoel did to try and save his mate Johan de Tooy. For that matter, what we did. And it's vastly superior actions than those that got issued. Now how dare they say to us, stand back and just accept the fact. Take another blow on the chin. It's okay. You know, be satisfied with the camaraderie. And not for once acknowledge that it's a gross injustice, because that's what it is. It's a gross injustice. Why have not one come back to me? Because I asked for this, I pleaded for this. I said, what is the channels I should use? They should know. They've written citations before. I'm quite willing to compile the citations. They must just say to me, these are the points and the parameters that have to be met. Just cover all of them. Then submit it to us. One of us will be willing to put our signature on the paper. If it then goes to the new dispensation and it gets turned down, I will understand, and we will understand, that it's impossible. But it's not even being tried. It's immediately rejected, and that is where the disgruntlement really lies and really kicks in.
You mentioned with the Battle of Ebo that most of the combat took place in the first 3 hours and the remaining 6 hours were largely mopping up.
Okay. Yes, that is true. All the rescue attempts were in the beginning, even though some... You have to understand that in a combat situation like that, time telescopes and microscopes, so you really lose track of what the time frame is. But what I am saying is that the rescue attempts were launched, but the guys that were initially in the Death Acre, meaning the 14 cars on the ground, 15 if you're counting Chris Tiransko, our squadron commander, that was behind the ridge. Only with the latter part of the battle did other armored cars come in to try and recover cars that are stuck. At one stage, at the end of the battle, Kreis gave the order to shoot out blue on blue. The armor guys refused blatantly. They said, you don't know that our mates, whether our mates are alive or dead in those cars. We believe them to be alive. We won't do it. So he later sent in artillery officers as crew commanders of cars and tasked them to shoot at the cars. Fortunately, they didn't go into the primary Death Acre because there's two distinct areas. I call the primary Death Acre, which was covered by indirect fire, but also covered with anti-tank direct weapons. And the secondary Death Acre was only indirect fires, 122 and mortars. So the rescue attempt took place in the primary Death Acre, and that's where the armored guys were involved in the rescuing. The ones that got decorated never went beyond the secondary Death Acre. So, just by plain logic, who was more in danger for doing deeds? The ones in the primary or the ones in the secondary? Why was only decorations written for the ones in the secondary? Logical explanation is, at that stage there could have been a senior officer on the ground that wrote the decorations for these people that did do brave deed. There was no one that wrote for the first part of the battle when the real rescue attempts took place.
Can you mention the rescue attempts from Bob Creel?
Okay, Bok I covered on lightly. We went in first on our own accord. He got wounded. We withdrew. And then the car was useless. I mean, you can't go in with main armament without the additional Browning. You couldn't fire the main gun. So he sent us back, which we ignored, and he jumped into Aubrey Kluter's car. Aubrey ran away, he jumped into that car with a new crew, and while John was lending fire support on the edge of the primary defector, he was lending fire support. Bok went in under his covering fire and picked up Gert Botha, brought him up, and then lent firing support to that car, and John Wall went in. Okay, then there was a situation where the 122 exploded, and Talia, who was also on the scene at the time, also helping load UNITA bodies and trying to lend a hand. And without Bok's support, John went in the second time. Nobody believed it was going to make it, but he picked up the driver as well the second time. Only people that got decorated were the people that were in the latter part of the battle. Why? Probably logic. Holland was dead. He probably could have done something about it. Our squadron commander was at the back with the mortars. He didn't have sight on the target. Chris probably passed the buck or said, no, we'll handle, you go and handle it at your mother unit. And there the politics kicked in. Commanding officer that was more interested in rugby, his name was Dolph Karstens. He's passed away. He wasn't interested, he didn't want to make waves. So I think Christian did his best to address this, but he had to do it on second-hand information. He had to do a debriefing with what he thought the people were involved. And now other people jumped on the bandwagon saying, no, no, I was the one that went in to go and collect so-and-so, and he, you know, the debrief weren't done with the rank and file, it was done with the troop leaders. And I think one can understand it, but that certain information items were conveyed incorrectly. But enough time have now elapsed, and enough has come forward, and eyewitnesses' account have come forward to say, this is the real truth. Why aren't we doing something about it now? And the rest of the guys are just shaking their hands and saying, too late, sorry. I mean, I firmly believe that Chris Duran, for one, supports our cause. But what can he do? He's sitting in the Middle East somewhere. He's not with the Savannah Foundation, as far as I know. And they basically want to ignore him, or to ignore us. That's what it boils down to. Luck of the draw. Wrong time, wrong place.
Could you speak about your role as the spokesperson for Veterans of Savannah?
Well, it's a self-appointed role, Barry, but first of all I need to say is that I'm not doing this for myself. I'm not suffering of any delusions. In a normal situation, the guy that gets decorated is either the troop leader or crew commander. The whole crew doesn't, each and every one, get a decoration. One of the crew gets it, wears it as his individual property, but it's actually for the whole crew. It's a silly, stupid rule, because he can't function. What does he do? Carry the armored car in on his back? Drives it and shoots it at the same time? So everyone has a part. But I'm not under that delusion that I will qualify for a decoration. It would be nice to recognize it, yes, in the form of maybe a bar for my MMM. Now, I'm not going to say no. I'm speaking for the guys that desperately deserve it, that guys that did brave deeds like Talyat and died on the scene and never got recognized for this. How? Why? Somebody have to speak up for these guys. Somebody have to take the quantum leap and say, hey, authority, take up and sit up and take note now. Time is now to address it. What do you want us to do? Wait another 39 years? And just or do you want to sweep it under the carpet to hide away something? That's my question. What the hell do they want to hide away? What effort is it going to be to make some effort to try and address the wrongs of the past? Is that too much to ask? I don't think so.
Could you comment on the command and control of the opposition that you ran into at Ibo?
Excellent. You could clearly see Ruel Diaz was in charge, Cuban Special Forces. His contingent was, some stats say 60 Cuban Special Forces. Some say a platoon 30 and 60 FAPLA. I have it on record, but I don't refer to notes when talking about this. My head is full of it. I don't check notes. I can definitely get the right figures, but immaterial. He had a large number of special forces. They were well trained. He was well trained. He did his proper terrain appreciation. You could see the initial defensive positions outside when you left Ebu. They decided at one stage it's not good enough, vacated that in a hurry, went and dug in after a proper terrain appreciation. He probably shot in on the terrain to zero his mortars, to zero his 122s. He deployed the correct OPs. The same cannot be said for our side. The most basic appreciation was not made, which is a terrain appreciation. And any officer worth his salt. I learned later on in life, I learned about tactics and I was taught by the best. Any one of the senior officers now turns around and tells me I'm talking shit, must rethink their approach. Because they were trained officers the same way that I got trained later. And the barest basics were ignored. Even after repetitive warnings. One being, you go on the terrain, you have a look at it and you say, oh shit, this is dangerous. Oops, a warning shot. There is enemy there. Oops, a spotter plane. There is something there. And the evidence when you went out of Ebo. They said, they were here. It's very fresh. All of that were ignored. And a guy like Chris can get away with passing the buck. He didn't appreciate. He left it to Holland. He blames Holland, who's conveniently dead, that he should have reappreciated. Where does the buck stop? He was the battle group commander. Holland was the battle on the day. Didn't he have to carry some form of responsibility? Didn't he have a buffer role to play from higher headquarters saying, hurry, you have to do it in a hurry? Didn't he have a responsibility to say, the safety of my men is my concern? No. Safety and welfare of your men. Keeping your men informed, the most basic principle of leadership, just blew out of the window. They can tell me I'm wrong and say operational planning took place. It did not. At the back headquarters, they had their whiskey and they had enough rations. They never did proper appreciations. How do I know this? We weren't raw troopies before Ebo. We were like battle hardened with a lot of battles behind us where we practice our drills. We weren't raw recruits. We weren't stupid about the terrain. We worked together as a team. And I know they didn't do proper appreciations because up until Ebo, we had to work from Caltech road maps. So how the hell could they have done a terrain appreciation with a proper military map? They didn't. Show me your operational orders. Those that oppose this view, show me out of archives. Where's your operational orders? Where's your confirmation notes that you gave orders? Each and every one of them had a clerk that could take these notes. Where's your war diary? 30 years have come and gone. There's no more restriction on the classification of information. It's open. Why can't we find these things in the archives? Were they destroyed? And why? Did they ever exist? I leave that one hanging in the air. Show me one OPSO and I will change my point of view. Show me one confirmation note, because that is what safeguards a commanding officer. Here is my orders I gave. If something seriously goes wrong and there's a tribunal or a board of inquiry or even a court-martial, that's a safeguard. This is the orders I gave, based on the tactical situation. Don't blame me. Blame the execution as a defense, for example, which doesn't normally wash, but it's basically the point I'm trying to get across. The basics were ignored, and they don't want this to be exposed as their weakness. And I'm sorry, we've kept quiet for too long. We were sacrificed for bugger all and discarded.
With your subsequent career in the SADF, you as an individual, what effect did the lack of recognition for your involvement with Savannah, including Igbo, have on your future military career?
Well, very, 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 very basic, very easy to explain. After Savannah, we were kept away from the rest of the military that weren't part of Savannah. The rest of the military didn't know what happened on the ground because it was still a closely guarded secret. That was available in the media was only gleaned from what Defence Headquarters decided to share and interviews with the self-same officers that I'm accusing of incompetence. So I served under commanding officers who weren't part of Savannah. Whenever I spoke in closed circles about our experience, the question would always be, statement would be, you a wannabe. If this really happened, where's your decoration? I never had the decoration for reasons that I perceive to be the logical ones that I just explained. But how do I counter that? You don't even know what happened, Colonel? Now you tell me I'm a wannabe because I do not have the decoration. If this did happen, it is logical that you will wear the decoration. It just adds major insult to injury. That's all it did, and it made me very, very bitter.
Results of the difficulty in coordination and your lack of knowledge of the presence of other SADF troops.
Yeah, that's a very serious one, because own forces were deployed in the same geographical area. I can show you photographs of how we were dressed. One set of uniform, prisoners uniform, no belt, no boots, bata tackies, one pair of socks, no sleeping bag. The clothes rotted off your body in the rain. Socks was the first thing that went. After 2 weeks, what's the first thing you do? You cut up the tackies like sandals just to give your feet the space to breathe. Whenever somebody came to a Fapla store or a Cuban store, they would liberate a cap or something for the sun. So everybody had long hair. the beards that a 19-year-old could grow, if you weren't informed of those forces, and they weren't informed of you, we could have killed each other like flies by just seeing the other party, because the rule was simple. Some battle groups had the rule, yes, fire only when fired upon. We decided after the first couple of contacts, shoot first, then ask questions, my mate. Therein lies the survival. So it's just basically, keeping your men informed, having a concern for the other men on the ground was something that was just ignored. And that's criminal. For any leader, that is criminal. I think, that's basically what I want to say about that. Now we learn in our group about these guys that were there at the same time. And you go ice cold, you say. We could have killed you. We wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. Didn't these people think? I mean, my astonishment is just of such a magnitude that I still can't get my head around it.
Presumably there would have been far greater efficiency if there was more coordination, if you could have had support from people in the infantry role than you have.
Yeah, we desperately needed our white infantry trained according to the same standards as us. We had to do with the rebel scum UNITA. When the first shot fired, they disappeared. The rules of engagement with infantry armor is the infantry will clear the opticals for you, will clear the D-files for you. An armored car is not designed for that role. It's not a tank. It is a reconnaissance vehicle. You need the infantry support to be the eyes on the ground, to clear the obstacles. The first shot gets fired with UNITA, they're gone. Their return fire is firing into the air. And that never changed throughout the border war. They remained scum, and we backed the scum, the wrong horse, the whole bloody time. It's like, it's like a compulsive gambler. You just throw in money after money after money to recuperate. We had our own infantry. They would never have stopped us. Never ever. Like was shown at Bridge 14. The guys deployed in conjunction with the armor, maybe not at the same time, and look at the successes of Bridge 14. How different could Ebu have been if a plain basic training appreciation was done on terrain and given picture and things like that. Any commander, lieutenant above, would have said, infantry, right flank, roll them up from the side where they're vulnerable. Armor, give fire support from where you are. That never happened. We had to take the shots from our blind little cars, one after the other, 7 shots out on the day. I don't even want to talk about the losses. It was just, if you count in the UNITA, and at that stage, at that day we had FNLA, deployed with us as well for the first time, which was slightly better than UNITA, but still useless. The moment the 122s came down, it was pathetic to see these guys looking for cover on registered targets like the gravel road, the junction, and they just got blown to bits. So, as far as I'm concerned, up to Ebu and Ebu, we never had infantry support, and it could have been a 500% improvement, if one can think of such a figure.
You've mentioned the logistical problems such that as an armoured car squadron you actually ran out of high explosive and were then told or suggested improvise with your high explosive anti-tank, which is impossible. What's your understanding of why you had such logistical difficulties?
I think there's 2 main factors. The one is logistics was in its infancy, and the SADF learned very quickly thereafter that logistics is very important. Secondly is that the war escalated so suddenly, and the need for us to be on various fronts at such a tempo that no logistical plan, even if it did exist, would have been able to cope with that. I'll add on a third reason, and that is we had to make do with one airfield. And that was swarming with UNITA. So the moment stuff got offloaded and international journalists. So the moment stuff got offloaded there, it probably got stolen by UNITA, or it had to be transported about 60 kilometers south, where we started our combined training with UNITA at a place called Kapolo, which was a prison compound, a prison town basically. So in the process of transporting the logs from Silverporter to Kapolo, probably more got stolen. There were more UNITA than us at Kapolo because there was a small training team left after we started deploying. And only later on in the war did they establish a depot at Silverporter. It was at Nunnery. And then we managed to secure another airfield at Sela, and things improved. But in our time, we died of hunger, or we shut ourselves to death from food out of date. Ammo. How do you go to war without ammo? How do you go to sleep without a sleeping bag? I mean, this is the basics that any soldier lays claim on. It's mine. Nope, didn't have.
And personal weapons?
Not allowed. South African make. Only after a couple of days, if not weeks, at Kapolo did Savannah become an issue us with baby 9mm Brownings, or the Browning short. Nice firearm. That's our gift from him, personal firearm, which of course upon our return the MPC immediately confiscated, and it was never handed into a store like everything else that we managed to pick up. It would have been proof that we were there, so the powers that be said, take away anything foreign, and the MPs are the collectors nowadays, military police.
Could you speak about your expectations when you found you were being sent on what you now know to be Savannah?
I think all of us at the stage, I recall we had one briefing. I still maintain I was never exposed to any order group. I'm not saying no order groups took place. I said I wasn't involved as a gunner of the second in command car with any order group. We were doing border duty, and then we took a trip down to Bloemfontein, only to get armored cars ready and to drive from Bloemfontein to Ondongwa to get put on an airport to fly straight to Silverporter. And prior to that, you know, a C-160, C-130 takes 2 armored cars. So it takes quite a while to fly in a squadron that distance. And you had preparations to do, like get your prison uniform, you know, scratch off everything South African on your toothpaste, on any personal effect you want to take in. So there was a briefing where I think it was an intelligence officer, I can't recall, very broadly told us, we're embarking on an exercise to go into Angola. Those of you that do not want to partake are now free to leave. There was definitely one, I believe, probably 3, that I saw walk out. Mostly the one guy I know was a technical service at Tiffy. And only then did they continue with the briefing, when the ones that didn't want to go. But logically, you kids, here's a chance, here's an adventure. And we all firmly believed in the propaganda bullshit that the politicians and generals pumped our way about the rooi gevaar and God knows what else, and communism, and I have my serious doubts about all of this now. If they denounced us after our return, how the hell can you believe what they said in the beginning? We don't know you, you were never there. So our expectations were, the briefing said, that we're just going in for a limited period of time, because there were peace accords on the go, and the three factions, FNLA, MPLA and UNITA, would go to the polling booth. And the South African government and the General Staff decided to support UNITA to establish a bigger geographical area and therefore have a bigger voting base, just based on pure geographics, not taking into consideration the bad track record UNITA already had with the local population. So that was another fallacy. And then something made the peace accord and the planned elections fall through. So while we were in Angola, the decision was made, now we wipe out communism, and that means every living creature, cat, dog, chicken, that supports this vile course. That's actually the motivational speech that Holshausen gave us. Those exact words, or some close facsimile, before we turned up north to head for Sela, the pig farm, Ebu, and eventually Bridge 40. So, expectations was a couple of weeks, that's why you take one set of clothes. Eventually they rot off you. We shut ourselves to death, we starved to death. Some guys had to be on drips from diarrhea, otherwise they wouldn't have made it. Our expectations were in and out and go home. Our expectations were, when you return from this excursion, at least there will be a welcoming function, at least there will be a parade, at least there will be some form of recognition, not being treated like lepers and put away from your other fighting forces, kept away from the normal run-of-the-mill, kept away from the new intake. And the ones that plowed out after the national service got their medals at the gate with Kunene class. No parade, no fanfare, nothing in the newspapers to credit the fighting soldiers. The ones that were credited were the decorated ones and the officers, because those are the only ones that interviews were done with. Now that basic denial is the root cause of all the problems, because it happened then, and 39 years later it's still happening, and they're still turning out their backs on us. Why? Should we just accept this and allow this state of affairs to continue? I think not. No ways. Not as long as I've got breath in myself. I'll stand up for my mates, because those are my true comrades of the military. Not later. Later there were some exceptional people. Those were my true buddies.
You found that there were officers who were removed on rotation during Savannah.
Oh, plenty of time. Officers did a stint and then they were pulled out to go and do promotional courses. We underground knew, of course. He was either incompetent or it was a personal problem. Always the excuse was he had to go and do battle group, or he had to go and do staff course, or he had to go and do this. But they rotated on a regular basis. Why couldn't they do the same with the national servicemen? Why did some national servicemen fight for 6-7 months in Angola and were never rotated? Take Foxbat 1, us guys. By the time we reached Ebu, we were so depleted that you did not even know your crew members anymore. With new guys coming in, this one sent back with malaria, that one sent back with battle fatigue, then now PTSD, malaria, diarrhea. So you always get new crew members. You know how that influences the effectability of a troop and a squadron, the effectiveness. If the crew members don't know each other and they can't mesh and they can't work together as a team, they don't think. Yes, they send in reinforcement. Yes, they send in follow-up groups. But they didn't replace us. They kept us there. It wasn't a relief. It was a reinforcement. Stupid. Totally ludicrous.
You were 19 years old when you started with Savannah. One tends to forget just how young so many of the ordinary soldiers were at the time. Can you give any illustration of the effects of what you guys went through on a group of 18, 19, possibly 20-year-olds?
Well, I think the first and foremost, the thought comes to mind, they were 18 and 20, 16 and a half. To the oldest were some permanent force members that were 23, which is still too young, but he's already a career soldier. And he got shafted as well. I'm talking about John Ball. He was in the police force first. But a 16-year-old going into trauma like this, being thrown in, as opposed to a career soldier, as opposed to a special forces member, there was no selection, be it physical or mental, like your special forces would go through. We had to go and fight against special forces as little kids with just the barest of training. I'm not saying the training wasn't effective, and I don't say we didn't develop our skills. But at the time, was the SADF training that good to go and meet such an enemy? I would say no. And the denial of us and the rejection of us led to, I'm sitting with a group of 150 friends who all suffer from extreme PTSD, who's all extremely pissed off, and with very, very valid reason. I'm also sitting with a group of guys that never had the joy to be grandfathers, to be fathers, to fall in love, because that's what you do at the age of 16 and a half to 19. You start discovering life. You're not sent out there on a suicide mission to go and kill people. That's just not on. I don't think anybody in the world can fault me on that one. No ways.
39 years after Savannah, you came across an Eland armoured car again. Could you speak about that?
Yes, we had a recent excursion to Russia, and we went to the tank museum outside of Moscow. Impressive place, working tank museum. And I didn't know that it was going to have that effect on me. When I saw my little Eland 90, well, it was actually a pan-out, but it looked the same like the Mark 5 Eland. And I basically just welled up. I put my arm around it. My two Russian friends stayed behind with me. I told them, for the first time I told strangers about the happening at Ebo, and what emotions I'm experiencing about this. The rest of our tour group couldn't understand, because they fought on lighter weaponry, not that old little piece of metal that if you looked after it, it looked after you. No, it was overwhelming, and it surprised me very much, very, very much.